The topic for the discussion is what? Building brands in a trust deficit world. It sort of leads one to believe that trust is on the wane, it's dropping. I actually think the title of this discussion should be Building Brand Trust in an Attention Deficit World. We've got a study called 3D where we just look at all aspects of a brand, and we've been doing it for a long time, about 30 odd categories. I looked at, there's a brand pyramid which gives you commitment, and I'm using that as a surrogate for trust. You actually find that across key brands, the commitment levels per se are not coming down that much over the last 5-6 years. Now, that tells you something. The commitment levels per se are not very high. They're quite low. Consumers are not very easily giving away their trust. But once they do give it away, they're not capricious, they're not fickle. They're a whole lot less fickle than the brand managers and agencies are about changing brand fortunes. And, this is where I think we just have to start deconstructing what exactly is brand commitment all about. And I think that's where I've come to the point of view, and there's some studies and stuff that we've done to sort of establish that, is really a function of psychological equity that consumers have with brand, and then a marketplace equity. The marketplace equity is all got to do with competitive pricing, width and depth of distribution, the entire media salience that you might be having, all the stuff that make you attractive, visible in the market. And of course those things count. But you also have the psychological equity, and we've been hearing some of them. I mean, Robin talked about it in the form of your gene pool. Are people clear about what their brand gene pool is and how you're actually propagating it through the generations to come? My own sense on this is that marketers today are talking way too much on the market salience factors of price, media, and distribution, and not enough on brand stewardship to build psychological equity. Case in point for all the Indian delegates is brand Nirma. It was what? It ruled the market, and it was supposed to be the marketing sort of history. It created marketing history in the 80s. Where is it now? And that's the point. It was only built on pricing. Somewhere along the line, the core equities, the psychological equities, if they aren't strong enough, and I think that's what really needs focus. Now, that's my first point. Building trust, I think it's old wine in new bottle. It's pretty much the same thing. I mean, what? Gosh, Volkswagen, after the success of the Love Bug in '68, they started doing all the Herbie series, right? No, I mean, that was what, 40 years old. It's still branded content. It was very engaging. It doesn't mean that it wasn't happening earlier. I just think that today the graphic equalizer of advertising and some of this other engagement stuff has to be wobbled around a little bit. And number two, the tools available to you, especially the digital tools which are unleashed, and it's beautifully brought out by Bill Sansom of Contagious. I think if you do them in a relevant, seamless way where you don't see the technology, I think those are the kind of things that will build engagement in what we call paid, owned, and earned media.
One of the issues that I'm interested in is looking at the area of brain science and how can it illuminate the issue about trust, and how can it illuminate the issue about the reduction of trust. So let's just go back a few steps from the front line of some of the things we've heard about and ask ourselves, why do brands exist? We're talking about trust in brands. What is the biological purpose of a brand? Now, you might all think the purpose of a brand is to make a business rich. Well, that's not the reason. That's a side effect of a much greater biological purpose. The biological purpose of a brand is to enable consumers to make buying decisions with less brain effort. So, into that context, if there's a decline in trust in brands, and the evidence shows that trust in brands has gone up by half, there's a problem for the brain to begin with. Obviously, the more you trust a brand, the less brain effort you need in order to choose it. So if there's also a decline in trust for some of the reasons that you just heard mentioned, the brain has got a problem. The brain has got a headache. What's he going to do? Because he doesn't want to use all his brain power to use all the evaluation of all those products. So the point about all this, and the point about trust is that we have found a new way to do this. And what I'm going to give is a demonstration. You saw some demonstrations earlier of what I call this new term I use of peer-to-peer marketing. We've heard the term engagement used a lot. Peer-to-peer captures, I think, the spirit better. You saw a very great one yesterday for The one we saw on Alipay, 8 million people watched it online, 100,000 discussions were held about it. That's peer-to-peer marketing, building trust, where consumers spread the messages themselves. We heard this morning 80 million people on the planet with no cost to Coca-Cola spread those films, those viral films about the World Cup. That's extraordinary. This peer-to-peer marketing where you get consumers as your partners in the marketing process is really part of the solution to what we've been talking about today.